What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 6 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Today's video is brought to you guys by Birddogs. And look, I know we're all searching for that perfect pair of shorts or pants that offers the best style, the best comfort, the best bang for your buck. Well, guess what? That search is over because Birddogs offers all of that and so much more. If you're looking for shorts, they have a ton of options with activewear, casual wear, or even beachwear. On top of that, their pants have a selection of khakis, joggers, and sweatpants. So what are you waiting for? Regardless of the occasion of the season, get yourself the most stylish, the most comfortable pair of pants with a built-in liner from Birddogs.com. And if you use promo code ADP today, you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Again, that's Birddogs.com, code ADP, and you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Make sure to check out birddogs.com, link in the description, and we kick off week 6 on Thursday with Washington at the Bears. And here, I've said it before, but not too many fantasy gold mines in terms of starts and sits, really at the wide receiver or running back position. For running backs, I mentioned it before, David Montgomery. He continues to be the main weapon for the Bears that I have the most trust in when he's healthy. And yes, I know this Washington defense is god-awful, but I still think Darnell Mooney is too big of a dart throw, a little bit too boom or bust. I just don't think that Chicago offensively with Justin Fields spreads out the football enough and is going to, target Darnell Mooney at a high clip rate where he is going to be at least saved by the volume, at least what we've seen so far. And due to those reasons, I'm sitting him here. Might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. I guess if there's any team that he can kind of have some success against, it would be Washington, but I haven't seen it up until now. Volume isn't there. I think the Bears are going to focus on the run. So to me, Mooney is a sit. For Washington, I'll continue to roll Curtis Samuel. He's the wide receiver 1 for this team as things stand. He's getting volume. Terry McLaurin, he's the next guy up. I think Samuel is a low-end wide receiver 2. McLaurin is kind of a mid-level, high-end wide receiver 3. I'm a little bit worried with this Thursday night game that it's going to be lower scoring. So, the floors for all of the players involved is going to be kind of low. I don't necessarily love any of the pass catchers here. I know some people are going to be chasing the points with Dyami Brown from last week after his big performance, but that usually does not work. He's the third option on this team. There's not going to be that many points to go around. I'm sitting him here. Then Ravens at the Giants. Really only one name I kind of want to look at. That's Devin Duvernay. With Rashad Bateman out this last week, he was, the primary wide receiver. Now, it was more so Mark Andrews at the tight end position that benefited from it, but Duvernay, next up in terms of targets. We still don't know whether Rashad Bateman is going to play or not in week 6. So that's TBD. That's something you have to monitor. I currently have him as a sit, though. I typically don't like to fire up wide receivers immediately after, a foot/ankle injury their first week back. That's what Rashad Bateman is dealing with. His volume hasn't been that high to begin with. He's relied on touchdowns and just being very efficient, big plays, things like that. So I'd rather sit him here, wait a week after his return from injury and then look at inserting him into our lineups. I think Duvernay is going to be, a wide receiver 3 for the Giants. Usually this is where I say no giant wide receivers. I could have followed suit with that, but a lot of people are going to be looking at Darius Slayton maybe because he had a decent outing this last week. I wouldn't get too cute here. I think it's going to be very up and down for these Giants wide receivers. I think it's a bit of a tough matchup versus the Ravens. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. I'm not going to get too cute with Darius Slayton and chase the points. I'm sitting him here. Afterwards, Jags at the Colts. I'll start Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. Kirk coming off arguably one of his worst games of the year. I do think he's going to rebound. I still view him as the top wide receiver for the Jaguars. We need Trevor Lawrence to do a little bit better, but Zay Jones, at least on the flip side, was a guy that had some success coming back from his injury. Now, Marvin Jones was the guy that had a huge performance, but I still think he's the third guy on this team. And for that reason, I have him as a sit at this point in time. I think Kirk and Zay Jones are the primary weapons here. And for the Colts, Michael Pittman. It continues to be Michael Pittman. Alec Pierce, I have as a sit. Yes, I know he rivaled Pittman this last week versus the Broncos, but I do think with Jonathan Taylor potentially returning, there's just going to be more of a focus on Taylor and just the top weapons on the team with Pittman. I think Pierce was kind of thrust into that role with the running attack kind of just being non-existent for the Colts this last week and just being compromised with Hines without Pittman. So I wouldn't try and get too many fantasy relevant starters here for the Colts other than Jonathan Taylor and Pittman, the way their offense has been playing. Afterwards, we go to the Patriots at the Browns. I'm looking at Jacoby Myers. Once he returned back from his injury, he's done well. I continue to say he's more of a PPR type of guy. I obviously still have concerns about it being the Patriots offense, them being a run-first team, them being down to their third-string quarterback. We don't know whether it's going to be Zappy or Mac Jones in this game, but, these games versus the Browns, they've been higher scoring if you look at the opponents and what they've done versus Cleveland. So I think Myers can have some success. I have him as a wide receiver 3 in PPR. Then for the Browns, Amari Cooper, he's probably going to get a lot of the attention, but he's still the wide receiver that I have the most faith in. He showed it this last week. He's shown it before. I'm sitting Donovan Peoples-Jones. If I had to guess, I think the Patriots are going to try and focus on stopping the run of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So I still think that Cooper is going to have a solid, outing here. I have him as a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. Moving on, Bengals at the Saints. A lot of asterisks here in terms of these wide receivers. So let's break it down. Jamar Chase, he's had a couple of down weeks. Yes, I understand. Bit of a tough matchup versus the Saints defense in that secondary, but you're not going to sit Jamar Chase. You continue to fire him up. Maybe you just got to view him as a low-end wide receiver 1 with obviously huge upside. Then if all these guys were healthy, I'd have T. Higgins as my next guy, as you see here, but he's got an ankle injury. He's day to day, so we have to monitor that. If he doesn't play, I'm starting Tyler Boyd, and I feel pretty good about that. I think he can be a sneaky play, and I think he can put up wide receiver 2 type of numbers. If Higgins does play, then I think that's just a little bit too many guys involved, and I would flip Boyd as a sit. And then for the Saints, Chris Olave, kind of takes that big hit, potential concussion, so you have to keep an eye on him. If he plays, he'd be my preferred start. Michael Thomas, he's been injured these last few weeks. He's a name to keep an eye out for. If Olave doesn't play, then Michael Thomas, if he's available, he'd be the top option. Either way, though, I view both these guys as low-end wide receiver 2s, and honestly, if Michael Thomas and Olave play, I'd put MT in the wide receiver 3 category. We also have to take a look at which quarterback is going to play. Is it going to be Jameis? Is it going to be Andy Dalton? You have to factor that in. I think Jameis is a little bit more erratic and not as consistent, so that kind of throws a wrench into some expectations with the pass catchers. Then Bucks at the Steelers. You're going to start the top 2 guys for the Bucks, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think Evans is a wide receiver 1, Godwin wide receiver 2, mid to low end wide receiver 2 in PPR formats. The Steelers are god awful right now, and teams are taking advantage of that. I don't think it's going to be almost a 35-point blowout again, but the Bucks can put it on the Steelers here, no doubt. For Pittsburgh, since they're probably going to be down big and pretty quickly, they're going to have to air out the football, probably abandon the run. That's a good thing for Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. So Johnson, even though he's not producing like he did last year, we warned you that would likely be the case. He's still getting volume, so he's salvaging low-end wide receiver 2 value in PPR formats. And then Pickens is that next guy up. He's got that chemistry with Kenny Pickett, which is nice to see. I think he's now, with Pickett under center, firmly that wide receiver 2. So for that reason, I would sit Chase Claypool. I'm also sitting Russell Gage for the Bucks. I think there's just a huge tier drop after Godwin and Evans, so I don't want to get too cute here. And if the Bucks go up big, it's going to turn into them running the football. So those wide receivers to me are going to be outside of Godwin and Evans, just too unreliable. I have Deontay as a low-end wide receiver 2, and then Pickens kind of as a boomer bust wide receiver 3. Then 49ers at the Falcons. I'll start Brendan Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. I'm not scared of this Falcons defense. I think that the 49ers can have success against them. As long as they continue to use George Kittle primary as a blocker, then I think Ayuk and Deebo Samuel can both have fantasy success. I have Samuel as a low-end wide receiver 1. Brendan Ayuk is a low to mid-level wide receiver 2. For the Falcons, I contemplated not listing anyone here as a start for them because this 49ers defense is legit. The Falcons are banged up. There's inconsistencies with the quarterback play, with the wide receiver play, but I'll give Drake London the benefit of the doubt. I think he's by far and away the top weapon for them, and he's going to get volume. That's what you're looking for. I have him as a low-end wide receiver too because of that volume boost. Then Jets at the Packers. I'm only really interested in the Packers wide receivers here. I think, at least they're more reliable. Allen Lazard has been, the wide receiver 1 for the Green Bay Packers, a big option in the red zone, which has been nice. A lot of touchdown success. Then even though Randall Cobb had a big, week this last game, I still think Romeo Doubs is the number 2 for the Green Bay Packers. So I would take a chance on him here versus the New York Jets. They don't scare me defensively. I have Lazard as a mid-level wide receiver 2. Doubs, or, if whatever happens here with the wide receivers, basically what I'm trying to say is whoever that next guy up is in the wide receiver 3 category for me. Then for the Jets, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, those are the 3 names to know, but I currently have all of them as sits. The Packers secondary, that's probably one of their strengths defensively, and with Zach Wilson, he's not exactly hyper targeting only one of these guys, and the volume isn't necessarily there. I don't believe in Zach Wilson. There's been more of a focus on the rushers and utilizing them as pass catchers as well. So if there's one name that you force me to start, I'd go with Garrett Wilson. All these other guys have been disappointing. I wouldn't get too cute here with these Jets pass catchers. To me, I think you're better off sitting all of them. Then Vikings at the Dolphins. You start Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. I think Adam Thielen's ceiling is going to be interesting here. We know what Justin Jefferson is. He's a top 5 wide receiver. He had an awesome week. No need to look at that any further. Thielen, without Tua or Teddy Bridgewater in this game, I think the Vikings can have a lot of success versus the Dolphins. And, they're going to be able to score at will because the Dolphins are going to struggle offensively. That's going to trickle down to their defense. They're going to be more tired, et cetera, et cetera. I think Thielen is in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 border for me. Then for Miami, so might be crazy to see Jalen Waddle as a sit, but again, if Tua and Teddy Bridgewater are unavailable and the Dolphins are down to their 3rd string quarterback, I would rather only take a chance on Tyreek Hill. If one of those guys is out there, then I would put Jalen Waddle as a start. But, I'd have him as a mid-level wide receiver 2. I still think Tyreek, probably high-end wide receiver 2, would be the preferred play. Then Panthers at the Rams. I'll start DJ Moore. Look, the big news for the Panthers, obviously firing their head coach. Baker Mayfield is probably going to miss some time. PJ Walker, former CFL quarterback. Let me break it down for you. He's nothing special, but I think he's going to get the ball to the top playmakers for the Panthers. That's DJ Moore. That's Christian McCaffrey. But again, I wouldn't get too excessive here with the Panthers players just because, they all of a sudden fired their head coach and maybe they have a little bit more life in them. I wouldn't take it there. I still think that the quarterback position is such a major weakness. I still think that, the Rams are going to cause them issues. I'm only taking a chance on DJ Moore. He's a boom or bust low-end wide receiver too. Then for the Rams, Cooper Kupp again. Obviously, he's a start. Not much else to say. He's a top 5 wide receiver week in and week out. And if I think DJ Moore is a boom or bust guy, you better believe I'm sitting Robbie Anderson. I'm sitting Allen Robinson. Kills me to say it. We've been wrong on him big time. He just isn't getting the targets. He's behind Tyler Higbee at the tight end position. It's bad. He's a sit, and potentially, depending on how things go, might be a guy that you just look at dropping. Then Cardinals at the Seahawks. I'll start Marquise Brown and Rondale Moore. I mean, Marquise Brown has been a great wide receiver to start off the season. We'll see what happens when DeAndre Hopkins returns. But here versus the Seahawks, this should be a high-scoring affair. In fact, I think this could be the highest-scoring affair of the week. The Seahawks defense has not been good, to say the least, and that's why I'm willing to take a chance on Rondale Moore. I think he's going to see some decent volume here. The rushers for the Cardinals are also banged up, so maybe they have a little bit of a bigger focus on the wide receivers and passing the football. For Seattle, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, that's been the case pretty much all season long. The Cardinals' defense doesn't scare me. I think both are in the wide receiver 2 category. I think Marquise Brown is a high-end wide receiver 2, and Rondale Moore is a boom or bust low-end wide receiver 2. Then Bills at the Chiefs. I feel much more confident about the Bills pass catchers. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. I think Diggs is a wide receiver 1. Gabe Davis, in what could be a very high-scoring affair, is in that wide receiver 2 category. Now, again, keep in mind, even though he had an amazing week in week 5, it was on 3 catches, 171 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So he is that big play guy. I wouldn't look for him to easily duplicate those stats, but I like the matchup here. For the Chiefs, honestly, I contemplated putting nobody or just MVS because Juju Smith-Schuster, even though he's getting targets, has been such a utter disappointment. He's not getting down the field targets. He's not finding the end zone. And I don't know if it's the way that he's being used, but it's just not what we were expecting. Right now, honestly, I'd rather take a chance on MVS. At least he stretches the field as opposed to Juju Smith-Schuster. But, this is probably the last week where I give Juju a chance because, again, you look at the matchup. I think this is another high-scoring affair, back-and-forth type of deal. If Juju Smith-Schuster can't get you double-digit points here, then, when is he ever? So both these guys, don't get me wrong, are in the wide receiver 3 category for me. It's Travis Kelce, then everybody else. So keep that in mind. But I think they're both worth a start, a dart throw, considering the matchup. Afterwards, Cowboys at the Eagles. I only really want to start CeeDee Lamb. Maybe that changes if Dak Prescott plays, but that's still up in the air. So for that reason, I'd only focus on CeeDee Lamb. To me, he is a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. For Philly, this is one of their tougher tests, I would say. The Cowboys, good defense here. I'd still start A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. I think Brown is kind of that low-end wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith, kind of a boom or bust type of, low to mid-level wide receiver 2. And then I'd sit Michael Gallup and Noah Brown. I just don't think with Rush that this offense has enough passing upside, so Gallup and Brown are sits for me. Then Broncos at the Chargers. I'll start Courtland Sutton. He has been the wide receiver 1 for the Broncos week in and week out. Now, we haven't seen the upside that we would hope just because, Russell Wilson has struggled. Some news came out that he's dealing with an injury, but, we don't know how severe it is. That's probably not helping his play. So for that reason, and just with how much this Broncos offense has struggled, I'm sitting Jerry Jeudy. If there's, one guy that I'm investing in this Broncos offense, which has been underwhelming to say the least, I'd rather it only be Sutton. For the Chargers, Keenan Allen, if he plays, we still don't know the severity of that hamstring injury. But if he plays, I'm firing him up. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 2 in PPR formats. That's obviously going to lower the upside for Mike Williams, but if Allen doesn't play, Williams is kind of in that low-end wide receiver 1 category, just getting a bunch of volume. Then, like I said before, I'm sitting Jeudy. Josh Palmer, to me, is just kind of that next man out. Even without Keenan Allen, it's Mike Williams, it's Austin Eckler, it's Everett. So I'm going to sit Josh Palmer here. But with that, we wrap up our Week 6 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We will do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.